Hello. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Hi. Just wanted to welcome everybody to our Women in Sports event. I'm Mallory Summers. I'm one of the directors of programming in Georgia on the WICT Southeast board. So firstly, I just wanted to thank everyone who made this event possible, which includes our volunteers. We have Comcast, Cisco, Wargo French, Cox, Eris, HBO, The Weather Channel, Spectrum, UP, Aspire, Worldwide Technology, Ridgeline Coaching, and last but not least, Turner. Huge thanks to Turner for helping us put on this event. Huge thanks to Turner for dedicating some of their employees to help volunteer and to introduce our speakers and participate on our Q&A. Also wanted to make you guys aware of a few events that we have coming up. And just a reminder, these are free to our WICT members. Both of these events are in Knoxville. The first one is Building Adaptive Capacity on Thursday, March 22nd. And then we have Own Your Project, sponsored by Comcast, which is on Thursday, April 5th. And then also we have a couple of events coming up in Atlanta, so watch out for information or save the dates about those in your newsletters, and those will be speed mentoring, and then we're actually, we're going to put on a Me Too event, which we're excited about. We're developing it, and that should be awesome. And then a couple more things, because we have a really packed schedule, so I'll shut up as soon as I am just done saying these couple things. So the first is, just wanted to let everyone know that this event is being recorded, so if you guys can just make sure your phones are turned off, and just make sure the ceiling is mic'd. So just make sure any kind of chatter and stuff like that, just try to be, I guess, just mindful of it. The other thing, so after our speakers come up, we'll do a Q&A, and then we'll do a raffle, and that's all I have. So to introduce our first speaker, we have Jennifer Williams, which has been a huge help to me putting on this event. She's been my counterpart at Turner, well, one of my counterparts at Turner. So Jennifer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Sorry. Awesome. Okay. How are you? You look great. You look fabulous. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. So my name is Jennifer Williams. I'm Senior Manager for Global Inclusion at Turner. That means I have responsibility for diversity and inclusion here, and so one of our strategic initiatives for this year is focusing on women in leadership, and in particular women in sports and in technology. So that's what brings you here today, and we're delighted to have you. We could not be more excited to have you join us in this conversation. My job is to introduce the illustrious. Right, did you see that one, huh? Christina. So I'm going to read this here so you just get it right. Christina joined Turner in 2016. As general manager of E-League. So how many of you know E-League? All right. Who said you could not make a living, right? Everybody's told you that. Absolutely. And she's the vice president of esports. In this role, she leads the development strategy for E-League. She's also responsible for business operations, content and programming strategy for E-League, as well as pursuit of esports opportunities. She has 15 years experience in the business. You would never know that, all right? 15 years in video games and new media driving business development for global companies. And the thing that she really wants you to know most importantly about her is that she's a crazy cat lady and that her gaming tagging name is Bird Bunny. So without further ado, I give you.
I'm going to use this podium, much to Zing's chagrin, because I have some notes. But thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I really, really appreciate it. As Jennifer just said, my name is Christina Alejandra. I'm the general manager of E-League and vice president of esports for Turner Sports. I'm going to start out with a pretty bold statement. I am the only woman in the world who runs a major esports organization. And for me, that is... it's weird to say as something that's extraordinary or something that's special, because me being different has been my normal my entire life. And so pretty much since day one. And so let me go back a little bit. When I was 4 months old, I was adopted. And I was adopted by 2 white parents. I had 2 white older brothers. I was in a family where I was different from the get-go. And I didn't know other Asians. I didn't see other Asians until I was about 3 years old, when my sister, who is older than me, but I tell her I've been in the family longer, my sister was adopted from Korea. And, you know, other than my sister and the occasional kind of Asian families we would see at different groups, I was the only Asian person that I really knew. And P.S., it was in Maine, right? So Maine is not, you know, Maine is not known to be a very diverse thing. But, you know, different was instilled, like, my parents were fantastic people. They really instilled in me that just because I was different, it didn't mean that I wasn't equal to my peers or to the people that were around me. And so growing up as this girl in Maine with, you know, an extended white family and having all my peers be white, that was the normal for me. You know, it was the normal for me to be the only Asian on my swim team. It was the normal for me to be the only Asian girl that was on my soccer team. It was normal to me that if I would walk around the mall with my brother, who happened to be white, he wouldn't walk around with me because he didn't want me to ruin his game because people didn't know that I wasn't his girlfriend. That was very normal. And it was very normal for me to be the only Asian. I was the only Asian in my graduating class. I think there was one other person of color in my graduating class. And then I actually went out to Occidental College. Now, some of you think, oh, that sounds familiar. That's because Barack Obama went there, and that's the only reason you probably know about it. But in the mid-90s, Occidental College was, at the time, the most diverse school by percentage in the nation. So imagine me coming from Maine and going to Occidental College, which celebrates diversity. But even when I started at Occidental College, I was different. A great example of that is I showed up to my dorm room, and you know, back then there was no Facebook, there was no social media, you know, email was literally just rearing its head. And I was with my parents and we were unpacking my stuff, and my roommate Danielle showed up. And she showed up and she sees these two white people with this Asian girl like unpacking things. So she actually just assumed that I was a friend of Christina Burbank, because that's my maiden name. She just assumed that I was a friend of Christina Burbank that was helping unpack, and then I turned around and I looked at her with my Maine accent and said, "Hi, I'm Christina Wicked, nice to meet you, I'm looking forward to this year." And so she was like, what is going on? But at Occidental, it was great to have diversity be celebrated, and my entire peer group was different. They were all different from me, and that was very normal for me. That wasn't something that was weird to me, to have this diverse group of friends. What was actually weird to me was when I was interacting with the Koreans that were at Occidental, because guess what? They all spoke Korean. I actually didn't know how to use chopsticks until I was 20 years old. Fun fact. You know, I was raised in a white family, and so I was different from them as well. But college was a great experience. I loved being at Occidental College. I graduated with a degree in economics, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do, which was be a number cruncher or, you know, work in business finance. No offense to anyone in here who's in business finance. But that wasn't something that I wanted to do with my economics degree. So I was actually very lucky in that I had a friend that worked at Viacom Consumer Products, which is the licensing group for Paramount Pictures and Nickelodeon. And there was an assistant position in the interactive department. And for those of you who are my age or older, interactive back in the late 90s, early 2000s meant video games. And so I worked for Viacom Consumer Products. I showed up there. The consumer products group was largely women, except for the interactive department. In video games, and it still continues to be this way, it is very male-dominated, if not white male-dominated. And so often throughout my career, I found myself being different. I was often the only person of color. I was often the only female. I was often the only female person of color. But to me, that didn't seem weird. It didn't seem like it was even extraordinary. It didn't seem, you know, that's how it was, and that's how I was used to my life. I was used to being the different person, but it just was normal for me. It wasn't like something that I was consciously thinking of day to day. And I would be remiss to stand up here and say, I haven't experienced sexism, I haven't experienced harassment, I haven't experienced casual racism, because I have. But for me, in my head, it was just part of everyday corporate life, which is a very sad thing to say. I transitioned over to esports about 6 years ago. And when I transitioned over to esports, that's when I was really confronted with the struggles that women have in video games and esports, and subsequently sports. You know, it is very there are very few professional female esports athletes. There are very few women that are working in the same capacity as me, as I said in the beginning. And there are also women that are participating, and they are, you know, their talent. They're the ones that are in front of the camera. A really sad thing to say is when those women get in front of the camera, we broadcast on this thing called Twitch, and there's chat. We have to get twice as many moderators in chat to delete the horrible things that people are saying about women. So it's very tough to be a woman in esports, let alone sports in general. Since coming to Turner, though, it has been a gift for me. And I said this earlier, Turner literally pays me, but they're not paying me to say this. Like, Turner has been a gift because I have been able to be mentored. I have been able to be a mentor myself. I've been able to really understand these issues and talk about them in an open forum. But my path here was a little unorthodox. So when I started here, let me tell you how I actually got to Turner. I was consulting for an esports company, and there was an article that came out that said no one alive could fit Turner's esports position. And my friend forwarded it to me, and I read it, and I was like, wait a second, like, this is the culmination of my career. This is everything that I've ever done. I actually am pretty unique, but the voice in the back of my head was like, there's actually not anything special about what you've done, Christina, but like, you should, you know, like, put it in there. Like, so I sent a cheeky letter to the Time Warner recruiter, and I said, and I cited the article, and I said, saw this article, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I just want to let you know that I am alive. And this is, you know, and these are all the reasons why I'm qualified. But the imposter syndrome in my head was like, whatever, just submit it. It's fun. Don't worry about it. You won't get the job. Shortly thereafter, I was contacted by the recruiter. Then the recruiter says, we're very far down the road. We just wanted to talk to you informationally as we grow esports to see if there's a position. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So we started talking, and by the end of the conversation, he said, hey, I'm supposed to have a call with Craig Berry. Spoiler alert, he's my boss. I'm supposed to have a call with Craig Berry later today to just fill him in on how the conversations are going and the status. He goes, but I want you to take my slot, and I want you to talk to Craig directly. And I still in my head was like, oh, maybe they're like want someone to help out with esports. And I talked to Craig, and I ended up getting the job here. And it's really afforded me, like I said, all of those opportunities to kind of pay it forward and really embrace the position and the unique position that I'm in. You know, I really want to lead the way and be a role model. I had a friend yesterday that I was having coffee with, and she said to me, you know, like, you're doing the mentor thing, like, you got your job as E-League, like, how do you prioritize it? How do you balance that with all the other, you know, stuff that you're working on? And I had never really been asked that question before. And one thing that became very clear to me as she asked me that question was that they're actually equally important to me. You know, I don't want to be having this conversation in 10 years that, you know, the struggle that women and people of color are having getting into esports and getting into sports. You know, I'd like to not be up here and say, I'm the only woman that runs a major esports organization. I'd like to say I'm one of the only women that run an esports organization. So that's kind of my journey. That's how I got to where I've gotten. And you guys, we have a lot of great speakers coming up behind me. So thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it.
I'm Tara August, the VP of Talent Relations and Special Projects for Turner Sports. I'm also known as Shidel Castro, but I'll tell you about that I have the pleasure of introducing Jen Johns, who's joining us from A&B Sports and Entertainment. She is the Director of Marketing and Brands. She's responsible for developing and implementing the marketing, advertising, and creative brand strategies for the Falcons and the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So she knows, very small job. Her award-winning team of graphic designers lead all of the design for the A&B Group, the Falcons, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and the Atlanta United. So she's both a football fan and a soccer fan and former soccer player. Prior to joining A&B, she worked here at Cartoon Network, so she knew Techwood back when it wasn't this nice. But she also was a marketing consultant and created promotional campaigns for companies such as Nike, Coke, AT&T, our TV networks were TNT, TBS, The Weather Channel, AMC, and Current TV. So please welcome Jen.
Other one.
This one? That's all worn out.
Yeah.
Hello. Can you hear me? Or should I stay here? It's great to see you all. Before I kick off, she just introduced me. I was going to introduce myself. I'm all good. But really, it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and thanks all of you for having us. Before I really get going, A&B Sports Entertainment is made up of a number of properties. We just mentioned those, and I just wanted to share just a little bit about what we do before I get started. Another one? Oh. Okay. There we go. Press play. There we go. I can do that. Is there audio? There should be. Yeah, that's my video. That's it was audio.
Is the audio up on the laptop?
Oh, you know what? Sorry, guys.
It's a really good picture. Welcome to Atlanta United.
Was one of these not plugged? Sorry, guys. Was one of these not plugged in?
The clicker, that should make a difference.
Is he plugged? Plug this mic in. Plug this mic in.
Maybe that's fine.
That's the only
We
thing I
don't
hope
get
has
audio. We'll
changed.
put some pictures.
Yeah. Why am I not? I can't see it.
It's the only thing I can think of that was different. Play.
So about 17 years ago, I left this place, and it's very different, but it's still fantastic. So I don't know, how many of you actually are from Turner?
It was working earlier, right?
Okay.
We didn't try this.
Weather channel in the house. Any weather? Weather channel? No?
Oh, me. Duh. Sorry.
I'm sure we have a ton.
We might just have to.
Yeah, I don't know if the sound's
You know what?
coming
I'll
up
just
on
turn
this.
this.
Sorry.
So now we lost.
Just let it, yeah.
It's okay. Now we got this. Okay.
All right, well,
We'll just go. We'll catch some video. Maybe, the next speaker is Lisa Chang. She's the head of HR for our organization. She can show these videos too. So over the years, I have moved back and forth between sports and entertainment, and sports and entertainment. So I started out after undergrad, and I went to collegiate sports. And then I went to grad school and came back and was at the Georgia Dome. You may have seen it was imploded a few weeks ago. And then I went over to Turner, but worked at the Goodwill Games. I know I'm dating myself. It is so old. I don't think some of you weren't born when the Goodwill Games existed. It's going to be awesome when you see it. But then, and then I went to and in all of those different environments, it's male dominated. Yes, we're talking about that today because it's women in cable television. We have an organization called Women in Sports and Events. There's definite organizations to help promote women in the sports industry. But I, also did not really think about it all the time. I was a little bit focused on my world, on how I could just put my head down and get to work. And I realized over time, it's not a man's world. It's our world. And really just wanted to, I recommend in all different cases, we all recognize the fact that we're not all, it's not balanced. There's not enough of us. There's not enough women leaders. But as we're going through, I guess the way I take it is I don't focus on it all the time. I'm really putting my head down and getting the job done, and that is the advice that I've passed along to a lot of different people on my teams. We can't focus on it every day. We want to absolutely make a difference for the people behind us and try to help make this better, but we also focused on the fact that it's our world. In fact, we brought the men into it. So in this case, we're absolutely focused. But sports and entertainment to me, they're the same. We've got, we're all trying to, in case of how many marketers here? Any marketers? A lot of different jobs. But for me, marketing is brainwashing people to think and do what you want, but mainly to feel the love and the passion for what we need people to feel love and passion for. Hopefully you believe in your product, but in our case at the Atlanta Falcons and Mercedes-Benz Stadium, we focus on the emotion, we focus on all of that, and the fact that we're trying to bring the passion to our audiences and remind them of how they feel about our brands, that's what makes it fun. If I'm trying to compare, I'm not sure if this is working all right. If I'm trying to compare how marketing and brainwashing people to work to bank at Bank of America versus support the Atlanta Falcons, there's a level of passion. I don't know how you feel about your bank, but I do not feel the way that I feel about the Atlanta Falcons for Bank of America. I love their online banking, but it's not the same. And I think that that's why so many people are focused on sports as a career, because they know how they feel about their favorite teams and their favorite brands, and they want to work in an environment where the consumer also feels the same way, be it esports, the Hawks, all of it is what they're watching on TV. They feel that passion while they're exposed and while they're immersed in it, and that's really what makes me love my job. When we're talking about that, we're focused on, I remember a time when I was immersed in a man's world. My very first job out of school, I went into the boardroom, and of course it was all men, and the athletic director at Georgia Southern University was dipping over the arm of a chair into the trash. And I was like, I can do this. This is deep south at the time to me. That transition was already a big bit of a challenge. And the first thing that he said was, gentlemen, we got a woman in the room. We can't swear. We got to act on our best behavior. And I'm like, I just spent 4 years in college swearing up a storm. What is he thinking? So again, just ignored it. When I'm thinking about advice, though, they asked us, hey, what advice or what lessons have you learned along the way? The one lasting piece, and I think everyone here working at Turner knows that there's always constant change. And I had one story that sort of brings it home for me. When I was at Turner, it was during the days where we merged with Time Warner, and then after that we were bought by AOL, and I absolutely thought, oh, this is unusual. You felt the earthquake. You knew that there was something different. You could feel leadership acting differently. They were under a new microscope. In addition to that, my boss went on a permanent maternity leave. Another senior executive went into rehab. And then another senior executive left the organization and brought in a new leader, and I had a new boss. I think the one lesson that I have to sort of pass on to all of you, and I think you, looking around the room, I know you've already experienced a ton of change, is just to remain open to it. I think that we're all experiencing change on a daily basis, and what happened to me is we then merged two departments, and one thing that happened is that I, who had my cheese moved, if you've read the book, I was grumpy about all the change. I wasn't riding the wave of change. I was just like, I remembered the glory days, and they weren't the same, and I hadn't caught up to what the new potential was for our new vision. And I think that that's a lesson that I can share with all of you, that, hey, we really want to make sure that we're looking forward. We're optimistically looking at all the potential that can happen through all of the changes. I know you're having them, because any day our jobs could end. Any day our new opportunities can come across our paths. And I just embrace the, hey, you never know what's around the next corner. It could be great for you. I've learned that. And just 2 weeks ago, we just merged, and I have a new boss, and we've just had a reorg, and Lisa knows all about that. And I'm absolutely encouraging my team to think of it as a positive. We've got a lot of new things going on, and it's going to absolutely be better for the organization. But the old me would have been like, oh no, it's doomsday. And the last little piece is exactly what you're doing here tonight. You're networking, and you are keeping in touch with long-lost friends like Kathy Hatala, who's in the back, who I've known for 150 years. And you're making new acquaintances, because those people are the ones, when they see a perfect job for you or there's a new opportunity for you, they're going to pick up the phone and go, hey, I remember you from 10 years ago, and I haven't spoken to you, but I've seen you on LinkedIn, and there's a really great thing that you need to know about. So network, and let's see maybe if our videos work now. And we'll have questions later, but thank you so much for having me. The sound doesn't work, it may not work.
That's the only video we watched, so if we want to go to the drone one.
Yes, let's try that.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Here we go. If it doesn't play, that's okay. There's not a lot of words to it. But it's not playing either.
There we go.
There we go.
Weird.
Let me introduce you to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. You have a really big falcon out front. You've seen it lit? Fantastic.
It's gorgeous.
It does function. You guys heard about it? There was this opener.
It's gorgeous.
Our offices are behind that end zone of seats.
Nice. There's dirt on the field right now?
Oh, there's dirt on the field because we have Monster Jam and Supercross.
Oh, yeah.
You can hear it if you stay really close to the They did. That was all drone, yes. And scene. We'll leave it at that. Thanks,
The next one's like all talking, right? So
Yes,
that's,
it is. Don't
all
shut
right.
up.
Sorry, friend. Goodbye.
Jen, I'm going to take your advice. Just in the off chance, hypothetically, that Turner has a merger, I will roll with the change if that happens. So my name's Tina Shaw. I'm the SVP of Business and Legal Affairs for Turner Sports, and I have the pleasure of introducing Lisa Chang, who's SVP and Chief HR Officer at AMB Group, which is the investment management and the shared services arm of the Arthur Blank family of businesses. So in her capacity as the head of HR, she leads HR strategy not only for their current businesses, but also for their planned growth over the next couple of years, both for Mercedes-Benz and Atlanta United. So no shortage of exciting things that I'm sure you're dealing with. Before AMB Group, she was VP of HR at Equifax and headed up HR for all of their global locations. And before that, she was in HR here at Turner. So without further ado, Lisa Chang.
Thank you, guys. Can you hear me? It's kind of awkward with the mic. Well, I'm so delighted to be here. It's fun to be back. Like Jen said, it's been about 6 years since I left Turner, and so much has changed, like beanbags and Adirondack chairs and Starbucks, and who was I walking in with? I said, why wasn't this here when we were here? Like, all we had was the cafeteria, which wasn't great. And now you guys have like a Ponce City Market or something. Clearly, all the good stuff happens when we leave. Well, I love being here, and it's been a while since I've been to some WICT events. Earlier in my career, I was very involved. Kathy and I know each other from way back then as well, and I was on the board here in Atlanta as well as nationally. Great organization, and I'm thrilled that you guys are taking advantage of it. And I'm feeling so much connection already with everybody that's here. Happy to see you, Zinga. I think the last time I saw you was right before your baby was born, who's probably like 4 now. And then Christina, it was great to hear your story. We should share notes because although I didn't grow up in Maine, I did grow up in Southwest Virginia. Here's my story. I didn't know I was Asian until I went to college. Right? And so I started getting invitations to these Asian mixers. And I said to my white roommate, oh, we should go to this party. She's like, I'm not invited. I'm like, why didn't you get an invitation? She's like, not Asian. I'm like, okay. So, I do a little bit on my background, and then I'm going to be a little bit provocative and let Zinga give you the real advice. So I have been in HR most of my career. I started out in financial services, worked for the Federal Reserve Bank, and then I went to manufacturing. And then I landed a career in media, and I was at the Weather Channel for 11 years. And when I was at the Weather Channel, it was sort of in the heyday of the Weather Channel when it was privately held. We launched a little website back in 1998 called weather.com. So I was in that early era when we were like, oh, there's this .com thing. I'm not sure if it's going to take. So I did that for 11 years. And then I left the company after we sold that business. Back in 2008, I think. And then I had the opportunity to come here to Turner, which was great. And I headed up HR for the Shared Services Division, which at the time was called Technology and Strategy, as well as all the international businesses. So I had everything outside the U.S., which was terrific. I have an MBA in international, so I was really excited to be able to get back out and do some international work. And then I left there and went to Equifax and did all international. Because I thought that's what I wanted to do, was be global. And then this thing called kids got in the way. And I have 3 kids. My oldest is now a junior in college. And at the time, she was in high school. And it sort of doesn't work when mom's in Argentina. And she has questions about college and school. So I thought, maybe I should be home a little bit. So I got the call from Arthur to join his organization heading up HR. And at the time that I joined the organization, we had just announced that we were going to launch the soccer team, and we had just gotten the final approval to build Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So that sounded like a pretty exciting effort. I've been in Atlanta for 22 years, and so to me it was the opportunity of a lifetime to really be part of building an organization that was going to really be here for a really long time. And I've told my kids many times that it's my sort of grandparent story, so I can sit in the rocking chair on the porch when my grandkids are, on my lap, and I can say, oh, I was part of building that stadium and all that. So that's sort of my story. So I have had the great pleasure of being part of the organization for a little over 4 years. And it's been an awesome journey. It's been very, very busy, launching a stadium as well as a soccer club. But I feel very blessed to have been part of a really fantastic organization with a very values-based owner. So, but what I thought I would do, because my story is not nearly as interesting as Christina's story in terms of how she got into, because I'm in HR, so nobody wants to hear like exactly how you get into HR. But what I thought I would do, because we're supposed to talk about careers in sports, especially for women, so what I thought I'd do is talk to you about why not to go into sports, right? So I thought long and hard about this, and I thought, you know what, sports is such an interesting field, and it's so well known that why wouldn't anybody want to be in sports? Well, let me tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. First of all, it's not glamorous, right? So your friends think, oh, it's great, you get to go to all the games, you have access to players, you get to see all kinds of things. Not true, not true. It's nights, it's weekends, it's holidays, it's days, it's nights, it's, you know, it kind of this vicious cycle. And you don't have all access. So, you know that big college football game that was happening in Mercedes-Benz Stadium a while ago, the Georgia-Alabama game? Jen, how many calls did you get? Yeah. I got so many calls, like people I didn't even know, or friends of friends of friends that like knew me. Oh, you don't remember me, but we were in the same third grade class. But I saw on LinkedIn that you work for Mercedes-Benz. Can you get me tickets? No, we didn't even get tickets. So, you know, the truth of the matter is it's a tough field. And I know a lot of you know this because you've either had experiences in sports or have been around the sports business. It is a very demanding industry. And for women, I think that is one of the reasons that some of us find it difficult. Work-life balance is challenging. I have a lot of ladies on my team who have small children. It's very hard, just going to be honest with you. So approach it open, with your eyes open, knowing that if you work in that type of environment, it is going to require long hours. The rewards are far worth it, believe me, but just be honest about it, because it's not all fun and games, and it's not all just getting to go events and sit courtside, because if you get tickets, they're not courtside. We save those for the revenue people. The second thing is it's also not a place if you're a super fan. And the reason I'm going to say that is because sports is a business, and it's a very, very big business, right? $100 billion are generated in sports. It's very complex. And as an HR person, what I would tell you is there's nothing that hiring managers in sports like least than having a candidate that comes in and says, I love sports. I want to work in sports because I love sports. Or I'm the biggest Matt Ryan fan. Or, Julio Jones is my hero and I have a tattoo. Or, those are the types of things that really discredit your ability to be a practical person in sports, right? What you need to do is make sure you understand the business of sports, right? So I'm an HR person. I can work in any business. But HR in sports is different. And what is it about sports that draws me to that field? And being able to talk intelligently about why you're interested in sports. One of the things that's happening right now, and I'm sure some of you guys have experienced this too, is there's so many kids in college right now getting sports management degrees. I mean, that's probably like the most common major out there right now. And it's not to discredit it, because I don't actually know what it is. But I would tell you that doesn't qualify you for anything, right? It doesn't qualify you for anything. So if you are a big fan of sports, great. We want all of our associates to be big fans of our teams. But talk intelligently about why you're interested in sports. Make sure you understand the business model. The ecosystem of sports is very, very complicated. So when I first joined the organization, I remember asking our CEO, Rich McKay, and he looked at me like I had 3 heads, to explain the economics of the Falcons. Because here I was thinking, we generate like billions of dollars, right? Like Arthur's really rich and we make lots of money, right? Wrong. The Falcons are part of the NFL. All 32 teams put all their money in the pot. It gets divided up. So it's not every time you sell a hot dog, we get the money. It's very complicated. And so making sure that you understand all of this is really important because you can speak intelligently about your interest in sports. So if you're a finance person, understand that. What we love is having people who understand what they can bring to the business of sports, right? So as an HR person, I have labor relations background. I've worked with talent before at the Weather Channel. I've done contracts. I've done international. I've done all kinds of things that are really valuable to a sports environment. That's more important than me just being able to say, hey, I'm a big fan of X, Y, and Z, right? So that's another reason not to be in sports is don't be a super fan. So what are the reasons that you should be in sports, really, specifically? First of all, they're among the smartest people I've ever worked with. Because sports is so complicated, and it's getting more and more complicated with data and analytics and the esports and fantasy leagues, and I don't even understand it, but it's so complex. And it's exciting and it's exhilarating, and there are more and more businesses being generated as a result of sports every single day. I tried to Google a map to see kind of all the touch points of sports. You might want to do that because it's really fascinating. You have everything from leagues, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, you've got leagues. That's a lot of sports. You have teams. You have 32 NFL teams. You have, how many soccer teams are there? 22 soccer clubs. How many NBA teams? 30. Okay, then go college, right? Infinite number of colleges that have fantastic sports opportunities. Then you talk about advertisers. You talk about consumer groups, Nike, Under Armour, Adidas. You have apparel, you have equipment, you have everything that you can possibly think of that is tangential to sports. And there's so much opportunity to be part of the industry that is generating so much. I also know that in media, because a lot of you are with Turner, I think I'm getting this right, but of the top 10 TV shows, how every week they show top 10? For some infinite running period of time, there are only 2 in the top 10 that are not sports. Every week. It's a professional sports game, it's a soccer game, it's an NBA game, it's a playoff game, it's MLB, it's sports. Sports dominates. So that is the reason to get into sports, is because you're working smart people, intellectually challenged, huge impact on the ecosystem and economy. The second reason is because women are among the largest consumers of sports. 50% of NFL fans are women. 50%. How many of you guys watch the Super Bowl? So, we all watch sports. Now, one of the things that happens, and I'm sure Zinga can talk about this too, is we don't market as well to women as we should. And that's what we're trying to work on with all of our businesses. And as you think about reflecting the consumer groups that are our audience, we need people to tell us what to do. So if we have a men-filled room of marketers that sit around and say, we're going to market this way, we're going to sell this merchandise, we're going to do this, you're definitely excluding a group of folks. Our food and beverage pricing, do you guys know about our fan first pricing? $2 hot dogs. Oh, yeah. Yeah, $2 hot dogs, $2 Cokes, $5 beers. One of the things that we did in our fan research is we offered a variety of food. We have gluten-free, we have healthy foods, we have Mexican, we have some of the little chains that are around town, like the Iberian Pig, we have, I can't think of the other names, Jen. The Iberian Pig, we have Kevin Gillespie's Game Changers. Part of the reason we had the variety, because, no offense to the guys in the room, you guys are probably happy with that hot dog, 3 hot dogs for $2. Hot dogs and beer. Women prefer a little more variety, right? So being able to have variety in the food is an important part because, by the way, 85% of buying decisions are made by who? Women. Yes. Who does the grocery shopping? Who buys the clothes for the kids? Women. Right. So when you're marketing, to Jen's point, we need women, and we need their voice, and we need them to help project what these things are that will attract women buyers into the market. So that's another reason that you need to be in sports. The main thing, so I want to close with a little story. My husband, one of the other pieces of our business, we have the Atlanta Falcons, we have Atlanta United, we have Mercedes-Benz Stadium, we have 31 PGA Golf Tour Superstores. Any golfers in the room? That's another thing, we got to talk golf, girls. Got to get that golf game up. We have 2 guest ranches in Montana, we have a family foundation, and the shared service company where I sit. My husband is a huge golfer, and this was some of the best advice I ever got when we were dating. Is a dear friend of mine who happened to be a little bit older said, you know what, he's such a big golfer, you should learn to play golf because one day you'll be a golf widow if you don't. And I thought, oh, okay. So that's the reason I learned to play golf early on. I don't play often, but I can still get out there and play. And it's been professionally, it's been a good thing to have that ability to play. But the story I want to tell, and some of you may have heard me tell this story years ago, is at a WICT event, is about the time my husband and I were out in California. And it was our anniversary, and he likes to play really nice courses. And we were at a place called Half Moon Bay, gorgeous course that kind of was on the coastal. And he said, well, you know, it's our anniversary, I want you to come with me, I don't want to play without you. And I said, you know, I can't pay the $250 greens fee because I'm not good enough, and I'd rather spend the $250 at the spa, thank you very much. He's like, no, just come with me, just ride in the cart. And I said, okay, I'll ride in the cart. So we're riding in the cart, beautiful day, I'm zipping around, he's playing, and we are paired up with this other group of guys. And they were typical, you know, talking smack, you know, betting against each other, you know, I bet you $100 you can't hit that barn or whatever, you know, and they were just going at it. And the whole time I'm sitting there watching them, and I'm watching them play, and they were terrible. When I tell you they were terrible, they were terrible. I'm thinking, I can't believe you wasted your money. Balls were going left, and they were going right, and they were whiffing the ball, and mulligans were happening, and the whole time I'm thinking, why is it that I didn't want to play, and these guys can justify being out here and playing? And then I realized to myself, you know what? The reason is because I'm not very good, right? I can hit the ball. To me, contact is winning. You know, my husband's always like, aim here. I'm like, there's no aiming. I just want to make contact. If I make contact, I'm good. So I thought, well, I was sitting there thinking, you know, the reason I don't want to play is, you know, get embarrassed. When you're not very good, you don't want to get out there and play. You're kind of hitting the ball around, and you're missing, and you're thinking people are going to judge you because you're not very good. And so for the entire time, I just watched these guys just whack at it. And finally, we got to this beautiful par 3, and I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? I should just try to take a swing because it's once in a lifetime, probably never coming back to this course again. Let me see what I can do. So I said to my husband, you know, can I just hit the ball once? He's like, sure. And so the guys were like, oh, you're going to play. And I said, no, you know, I'm just going to hit the ball once. I don't really play. So I get up there and I chip the ball and I look, get my little grip going, you know, right hand over left hand, doing my whole little stance. I hit the ball. It was probably the most beautiful shot you've ever seen. I mean, it went flying right over the water. It landed probably 4 feet from the hole. Okay, it was a par 3. It lands 4 feet from the hole. The guys were like, oh my God, I thought you said you didn't play. I said, I don't play, so take that. So I go up to the hole, and I put it in, and I birdie the hole. And the aha moment that I had, and the thing that I want to leave you guys with, is I realized that the only limitation that I had to playing golf was the fear that was in me. And it was my own obstacle. Nobody else cared how I played. Nobody else was going to judge me. I was judging myself, and I was thinking, I'm not good enough to be out there playing. I'm not good enough to justify paying $250 for greens fees, right? But what I proved is that I am good enough, and I need to be fearless, and I need to just go out there and hit the ball, and damn it, I'm just as good as you guys are. So my advice is just to be as fearless as you can. Go out there. If you're interested in sports, go for it, because we need fearless, smart, intelligent women in the business. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. That's an awesome way to end things. I think I get to work with wonderful, fearless women in sports all the time, and I want more of them. So that was a great thing to say, Lisa. Tonight, I am Hanyard Poole, by the way. I oversee for Turner Sports the March Madness NCAA team, who are downstairs right now testing, getting ready for the tournament. So after I finish here, I'll be going down there. Back to Lisa's point about nights and weekends and things like that. And then I also oversee what's coming up is we're going to have a new OTT product coming to market soon, and I also oversee that. So a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I have the pleasure of introducing, everybody calls you Zinga. Yeah, so I want to call you that too. So Zinga Shaw, who is the SVP and Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the Atlanta Hawks. And in that role, she's the only person to hold a role of that title for the National Basketball Association, which I think is really cool because there's more to come, but she can set the way. And in that role, she's also in charge of really making a core competency, diversity inclusion, a part of the business, driving the business, and really just making it an everyday practice there at the Hawks and hopefully beyond. So it's my pleasure to introduce her. She's a Spelman grad and Penn grad, and thank you for coming.
I'm actually going to stand in the middle of the room. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So if you can't hear me, then I'll do the microphone, but just want to do this like a real TED Talk, you know? So this has been such an exceptional evening. These women are so awesome, and their stories have been so great. And so when I was reading their bios when we were preparing for this whole entire session, I wondered, why did they invite me to be here? We have all of these Turner women, you know, current Turner, past Turner. Why am I here? We're at Turner. And then I thought about it and I said, I work for Steve Koonin, so I'm Turner's stepchild. So that's why I'm here. But in all seriousness, thank you all for having me. I am the first person in the National Basketball Association to be a Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. Not the only, but the first. But what does that mean? You know, a lot of people say that's a long title. There's a lot going on. What is it about? How did you get into it? Did you apply for that job? Tell us your story. And I always start my story by talking about my diversity and inclusion journey, because I've been on a journey in this space for a long time. So it started 12 years ago at the National Football League when I was in the Human Resources Department there. I was in the New York headquarters at the league office and supported many groups. So I supported the marketing team, consumer products, events, and the list goes on. And I remember one time we were going to do this huge pitch for Pepsi. I said it in Atlanta, Georgia. I said the wrong word. But we were pitching Pepsi for a huge, unique deal that would be like a 4-year sponsorship so that all of the NFL stadiums would have Pepsi product. And we got the best team together. We put this team of 10 exceptional practitioners across all of our businesses. And this team worked on their pitch, and they were in there night and days, 6 weeks, and they were ready to go. And so on pitch day, the team went and they met with Indra Nooyi, CEO, and her whole entire team. And they were so confident that the NFL was going to land this deal. Because, I mean, why wouldn't it? It's the largest sports property in the United States. 98 million people watching the Super Bowl at that time, probably more now. It was just, the NFL was dominating. And so we were just confident that Pepsi had no choice but to do business with us. And so after the pitch, Indra immediately told the team that she was not going to do business with the NFL this year. And she said, the reason that I'm not going to be able to grant you all this sponsorship is because you have 10 heterosexual white men in front of me. There's no level of diversity that I see in front of me. And so it makes it very difficult for me to do business with you. because I myself am an Indian woman, and I have team members from Brazil and Australia and the United States and Africa and all over this world. We're a global brand. And so we need to make sure that we're doing business with other global brands. And so if you're not able to demonstrate that you have an understanding of those demographics within your own organization, I can't be confident that you can market to them in real life. And so for the first time, the NFL was told no in a big way. I mean, there was like $25 million on the line. And so everybody came back like really shaken up. And they were like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And that's how we started our first diversity council at the NFL. And I was a member of the first diversity council at the NFL. And it was great. I mean, we put our heads together and really tried to tackle tough questions in a very real way. We used the council as really not only a sounding board for questions that we didn't understand about emerging demographics, but it was really a business resource group where we solved business problems. And over time, the NFL certainly gained a lot of traction in that space, started to dimensionalize the people that were working there. So not just male dominated, but you started to see women employees, you started to see people of color in prominent positions. And so there's still a long way to go, but the point is that we had to go through something bad in order to start the conversation. And so after a couple of years, I left the NFL and I moved on to another organization called Edelman. And Edelman is the world's largest public relations agency. And I started at Edelman in the HR department. I was a human resources practitioner, but always had a genuine interest for diversity and inclusion. And so I remember supporting, so we had these big client groups called GCRMs, which stands for Global Client Relationship Managers. And so those were generally like big accounts, our biggest dollar accounts. And one of the accounts that we supported was Starbucks. And so Starbucks asked us, they said, well, you know, we give you guys a lot of business, but what we need is a diversity plan for our internal organization. Is that something that you guys can help us do? And we said, of course, we can help you write a diversity plan. Because it was just getting the money. That's what we were really interested in. Not really listening to the client, just trying to land the next deal. And so we sent a team of people to Starbucks in Seattle, and we got similar feedback that the NFL got when I was there. So it was like this story happened all over again. It was like, well, we asked you to write our diversity strategy, but we don't see any diverse practitioners here, and so we're not sure that you're the right agency for this. And then our CEO said, oh, you know what? We've got Trish in DC, and we have Carmela in LA, and we can just put this team of people together and send them to you. And so it was very reactive. It wasn't real. It just picked minorities out of the hats and just put a team together and said, they're going to write your diversity strategy for you. And it's so interesting. It's kind of like the story that Christina told. Like, if I looked at Christina and said, well, she's Asian, she's going to tell me all about Asian culture, she'd be like, no, I'm not, because I'm from Maine. And I don't know Asian people, right? So we can't make those kinds of assumptions about people when we look at them. And so that's what we did as a business. And so after having these two experiences in these big, big companies that have brand recognition, make a lot of money, I said to myself, something's wrong. And so I approached the executive committee at Edelman and I said, you've got to let me start a diversity and inclusion function. They were like, what's that? I was like, I don't know, but we have to do better. Like, this is not going to be helpful to us in the future because our clients are demanding more. They're asking for more, and if we're not able to deliver, we're not going to be competitive. And so they let me start a diversity and inclusion function at Edelman, and I ran it there for almost 5 years. And while at Edelman, in the New York office, I moved to Atlanta for a couple of reasons, family reasons going on. And so I was in the Atlanta office and got a phone call from a big law firm called Alston & Bird, which you all probably are familiar with because I see some heads nodding. And so Alston & Bird was Edelman's client, so we would do PR for them, but we never really utilized them in a legal sense. But they needed to utilize us for once. So they gave us a call and said, we have a client that we are doing a legal investigation for. We can't tell you who the client is, but we can tell you that it's a sports organization and they're about to have a racial crisis. And so they tapped me, Edelman tapped me I wasn't even a client expert. Like, I was really an HR practitioner doing diversity, but they said, well, she can help you guys because she knows sports. She's been at the Yankees, she's been at the NFL, and she knows race relations because she leads diversity for us. And so I went to Alston and Bird's office that day and met Steve Koonin, CEO of the Atlanta Hawks. He had just gotten that job. He had been there for 4 months after leading you guys here at Turner for so many years. And he was accompanied by a man named Scott Wilkinson, who was the general counsel. And they said, you know, before we tell you who we are and what's going on, like, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? And so I gave them some case studies and talked about how I got to where I'm at and why I think I could be helpful, but had no idea what the heck I was about to help with. And they said, okay. They left me in the room for 2 hours alone. Seriously, I had a laptop. I was like, who are these people? I'm like trying to look for their pictures on the internet, like, I'm going to figure this out. And then they came back and they go, we're with the Atlanta Hawks, and we just became aware of a situation where our general manager and our controlling owner have been trading racist emails about the African American community, and they've been doing it for about 2 years now. And then it all came to a head because we had a board call recently that was being audio taped. We didn't know it was being audio taped, but it was. And our general manager made some really, really awful comments about an African recruit, Luel Deng, and basically said that we shouldn't put him on our team because African people cannot be trusted. And so they said, well, do you think that we can, like, keep this a secret? And I was like, well, I'm a stranger and y'all just told me the whole story. So, you know, pillow talk and all of that kind of stuff goes on. So I said, listen, what happens in Vegas ends up on YouTube. So it's going to get out. So what I think you guys need to do is own this story. It happened. Let's figure out what steps we need to take to get out of whatever crisis is about to unfold, because it will. I mean, it was 2 months after the LA Clippers just went through whatever they went through with Donald Sterling. I think you all remember that story. And so not only is it another sports organization, but it's another basketball team. So I said, well, perhaps there's a trend in the NBA, and maybe you guys need a chief diversity officer. And Steve said, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard in my life. There's no such thing as a chief diversity officer in the NBA. We don't have that job. That's not a role that exists. And I go, well, yeah, that's why you guys are in trouble all the time. So he came back a couple of days later and said, you know what, I'm going to hire a chief diversity officer. And then I applied for the job, and that's how I got to the Atlanta Hawks. So my first couple of days at work were not pleasant. It's not like going to a new job where there's flowers on your desk and people are like, welcome to work. It was more like, the news is in front of the arena, the SCLC wants to talk to you, Rainbow Push Coalition wants to talk to you, African Americans are out there upset, what are you going to do? How are you going to fix this? And I was like, okay. So I learned very quickly that I could not do this work alone. I also learned very quickly that a lot of people didn't believe that this job was real. They thought that I was a bandage to cover a wound. They thought, oh, they'll just put a black woman in front of this whole entire mess and a couple of credentials behind her name, and so that'll just make everything go away. But she's not going to really be doing anything day to day. And so a couple of reporters asked me, like, what do you do? What is your day job? Do you really do stuff? And I said, listen, if the intention of the organization was to put me in place for the wrong reasons, that has nothing to do with me. When I decided to take the job, I decided to work. And so whether they like it or not, I'm going to be working every day and getting on their nerves because we have to fix this. We have to make this thing right. And so for the past 3.5 years, I have lived my life and I have been very intentional about partnering with the community, starting a diversity council that not only has Hawks employees, but it also has people that reside in the community, people that are small business owners, academics, folks that are affluent, folks that are poor. You know, I really tried to take, you know, all of the racial demographics that are in this city, all of the religions, the LGBTQ community, just really thinking like, who lives here? Who do we need to serve? Who have we underserved? And let's figure out collectively, because you can't do this stuff on your own. And so over the past couple of years, we've started some programs and been a part of amazing initiatives that no sports organization had ever really done. I mean, in the Atlanta community, we were the first sports team to march in Pride. And we keep marching in Pride. And last year, we ended up placing number 2 in the float competition. Which is so awesome. I mean, so Georgia Aquarium won. Everybody goes, well, who won? And I'm like, Georgia Aquarium. And I'm like, I don't have a fish tank with real fish swimming. Like, I can't beat that. I just have a big bird who comes around with us. And so, yeah, we placed number 2. But the point is that we were aligned with that community, and we did it organically. Like, I think there's so many ways that we've touched and reached out to emerging communities, and the community that we hurt, the African American community. Just today we had kids from King Middle School come to our facility. They learned about the business of basketball. So we had 8 executives talk to them about careers throughout the day. And then we took them to the practice facility so that they could see the basketball side of our business and do drills and meet players and meet coaches and just really have a holistic understanding about how all of this stuff works, right? Because a lot of times kids from marginalized communities think that their only path to basketball is on the court. And if you grow up to be 5'8", good luck with that. So, you know, there's other ways to get involved in sports, but I think a lot of times people just don't know. They don't have the information. And so the Hawks are really trying to be at the forefront of leading this initiative and looking forward. I think we have to be honest about our past. I always talk about what happened with the crisis and what those former employees and leaders did, because that was what put us on this journey. Unfortunately, same situation at the NFL. We had to lose all of that potential money to get on the journey. At Edelman, you know, Starbucks almost took their whole entire business away from us because we weren't competent in this space. And so what I will say to the audience is, in terms of diversity and inclusion, don't get yourself into the position where you're in a crisis and then have to do the right thing. Everybody in this room has a responsibility and an opportunity to meet new people, understand new mindsets, bring things to the table that no one would ever be able to bring, only you can bring. I wrote a blog post called 7.3 billion differences, because there are 7.3 billion people in this world, and every single person is unique in some way, even identical twins. And so bring all of that to the table. We have a responsibility because the world is going to keep getting more and more dimensional. You're going to keep getting more Christinas, these unicorns that kind of look one way and have a totally different experience that you could never, ever imagine unless you talk to her. And so that's one piece of advice. And then my last piece of advice for this group is chart your own path. Like, you don't have to apply for the posted position all of the time or live in this box because people tell you you have to go to college, you have to work at Turner, you have to work in sports. Like, make your own path. Like, I never, for my last 2 jobs, there was no job description, there was no posting. I kind of came up with the idea based on what was happening in the landscape around and have made a difference. The NBA ended up hiring their first chief diversity officer 6 months after I started, and now we have 2 other chief diversity and inclusion officers, the Cavaliers and the Sixers. And so Commissioner Silver recently made a statement and said he wants all 30 teams to have this job in the next 2 years. So that's what I mean. You can make a difference. You can have the CEO of the company say, that's a stupid idea, we don't have a chief diversity officer, and then 10 years later you made a difference and you made a movement. Thank you.
Everyone hear me? I'm actually testing for Q&A too because we don't have mics. So one more round of applause. And then we're going to do about 20 minutes of Q&A. So can I call all the speakers back up if you guys are comfortable to sit here? And then 3 of the ladies who introduced our speakers. So again, we don't have a mic, but the ceiling mic should pick you up.
This is my privacy screen.
Yeah,
sorry.
exactly.
I'm gonna pull my dress way down.
And action. Go. Does anyone have any questions?
to young women who are coming up and they may see that as like, oh, it's not that many women, so maybe I shouldn't go that route because it is male dominated. Just like, you know, sports was at one point, it's not where it should be, but you know, me growing up, I'm like, oh, okay, now I see more and more women. So what advice would you give to the young ladies who may be deterred because of the lack of women in esports? Like, I didn't know anything about it. It's like, I didn't know women did that. So.
I think it's the same advice that anyone would probably give about sports. I actually, the thing that was resonating with me is when she was talking about, like, don't be a fangirl. Like, just, you know, if you're interested in esports or you're interested in video games, I'm very passionate about esports and video games, but, you know, find that pocket skill and find that way that you can be additive to the industry, and then really have confidence in the fact that that you know your shit. I mean, like, for lack of better words, like, so for any job that you apply to in sports, whether it's esports, whether it's stick and ball sports, video games, any industry that's male dominated that you don't know about, learn about the industry. Don't become a total like fangirl about it, but learn about the industry, figure out ways that you can contribute, that you can be additive, and really when you're interviewing or you're talking about those positions to whoever you're interviewing with or whoever you're talking to, don't craft the conversation around you're a fan of video games and you didn't know girls could do it. Like, have confidence in the stuff that you are good at and find a way to be able to translate that to whatever job that you're looking at.
Thank you.
Jenny, y'all have anything to add?
I'll just add too, I mean, I know many of us probably get the question of, you know, what are the obstacles you see as being a woman in sports, but there are some advantages. So, you know, what I've said for a long time is if you're the unicorn in the room, they're going to stare anyway, they're going to be surprised you're there. Put on a show. You know what you're talking about. Come in prepared, have great ideas, speak up, you know, ask questions. Like, they're going to be, you know, looking at you, you're going to stand out anyway, so that you might as well have them walk away and say, I'm really impressed, or I remember who she was because she came in prepared, full of ideas, unafraid. So there certainly are advantages to being the unicorn in the room.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Hey. When people talk about diversity, and I think especially with women, sometimes there's a trend where you kind of subconsciously start acting like a man, and that's what makes you accepted. How do you maintain your identity while still merging or integrating with someone maybe who is not as enlightened and welcoming of diversity?
I don't ever want to act like a man. I just think, I mean, gosh, I think we're the perfect gender to be leaders, like, because you have so much of your job is being empathetic, right? Whether it's to a business concern or whether it's to a person. And so why wouldn't you want that characteristic to come through? And so I find myself as being myself, but as long as I'm being true to the business and making the decisions that are right for the business, it's so easy just to be who you are. And I've never felt like I've needed to act like a man to get noticed. I don't know if you guys.
I don't know. I guess I've definitely noticed it sometimes. Like, a part of my job is negotiating a lot of our deals with the leagues themselves, and you walk into these rooms and it's, 20 people, most of whom are white men who are real boombastic and loud and, just very different from my own style and personality. And no one has said it, but I have certainly myself had the perception of, like, well, maybe I need to be more, but I don't really know how to do that. I mean, so I have to be authentic to be effective in that room. And so to the earlier point, I know this is going to be a theme of just knowing your stuff, like know it well, say it in whatever voice and style you feel comfortable in. But, I think it's okay to not conform to the norm. And I think times are different now. Like, I can see it changing of different styles being respected more, and this idea that, well, you can be soft-spoken or you can be this way and you can still be just as effective. I think it's changing. But you need examples of people being authentic to really get that message across.
But I will say that the struggle is still, if you're in a boardroom or you're in a room with a bunch of men, I think it is difficult. Like, I've been asked to get coffee. I've been asked to take notes when it's my meeting that I was supposed to be running, right? I'm a very, as some of my colleagues know, I'm a very direct individual, and I'm very outspoken. And there are a lot of times, to further your point, where I have been accused of being like pushy, bossy, bitchy, whatever. And so it's also trying to like strike that balance where my male counterpart is saying the same thing in the same tone, and they're being very honest and direct and strong, And so it is a little bit of a mask that we all wear sometimes. We can be our authentic selves, but trying to find that balance and also find male allies that you work with that can actually be like, no, you're talking over that person, or no, Christine's not being a bitch. She's actually just saying the same thing that you said. You're just explaining it after the fact. Like, I think that finding those people around you and educating them and having open and honest conversations with them definitely helps. To Tina's point, I don't think you morph who you are, but there is a reality that there is a lens that people are looking at you that's differently than your male counterparts.
I'd like to know from each of you guys, what is like the legacy you want to leave behind, or what is something that you want people to say about you? If somebody's asking like, oh, Tara, if they wanted to know something about you, what would you want them to say? Like, what is something that your legacy and you're proud of kind of saying about yourself? Besides being a female in sports or,
Well, that's deep. So I would say, I mentioned I have a daughter. She's 21, and she is studying to be an engineer. And so she worked in a construction company for 2 summers as an intern. And that was the hardest thing I've ever had to witness, is my daughter coming home when she is an engineering major, working in reputable companies, telling me about walking through the job site and sort of the treatment that she felt that she got. And so there are 2 things I'd say to the legacy part of it. One is I want to be known as the mother that set a great example for my daughter to lead forward and pass on, that she's confident, that she knows her position, that she can speak up, and that she adds value because she's smart, and that she can be part of any organization that she chooses to be a part of. And that's something that I didn't know that she was watching until that happened. And then when she started telling me about what was happening at work, my immediate reaction was, give me the name of the guys and tell me where they are, because I'm going to hunt them down. But then her reaction to me was like, Mom, I've got it. And she handled it beautifully. And so that, I think, is a legacy that's important to me. The second legacy I think I would want to leave, which is more related to my career and work, is the legacy of just being kind to people and making sure that no matter what my job was, whether I was on the front lines working with staff or in the executive offices working with our CEO, that everybody that I worked with was treated fairly and kindly, and there's no reason that you can't be an aggressive negotiator but be kind. And I think too many times people feel it's either or, that you can't be a tough person in business and be kind. So that's what I would say I'd like to do.
On the home front, for me, I have a couple of boys, and I'd like to think that my legacy is that I'm raising Renaissance men who see the world through a very broad lens and are not just creatures of their history. So they're evolved gentlemen. That's the goal. I see glimpses of who they'll be, and I'm proud of that so far, but yet I have teenagers, so I don't know. But then I'd also like my legacy to be that I lived with passion, and that I tried to inspire passion in others from on a marketing side.
From the personal home front, I think about my baby. I have a daughter who was born on Halloween. She's my trick or treat. I love her so much, but she's 15 months now, and so every time I change her diaper, and this is a true story, she says, "Thank you." Whenever I give her a bottle, "Thank you." You know, I taught her thank you. I used to say thank you, thank you, thank you ever since she was this little, right? And so now she gets it, and she thanks me for a lot, and she thanks her dad. And so I want to raise a child that has gratitude. I do not ever want to have a spoiled brat in my house, somebody who is selfish and unkind, and just because mom drives a nice car and has a good job, I'm entitled. Lacey will be working and doing things in the community as soon as she can really walk. She kind of walking, but when she can really walk, like she's going to be doing stuff because she has to be grateful. There are so many kids. I think you guys probably saw the legislation that just came out yesterday where they're not letting LGBTQ people adopt kids. And so there's kids without homes. And so just because you have a home that's good, you need to be grateful. Yeah. It's not a right. It's a privilege, right? So raising my child with gratitude, I want to be known for that. And then from a work front, I want to be known for changing the face of sports. Historically, when I came into sports was all white men, people running the boardrooms, not the athletes. I'm talking about the corporate side, front office. I want it to look different. I want women to be CEOs in sports organizations. We saw the Mavs just made a big move yesterday. I want to see people of color ascend to the highest positions. So I want to change the face of sports.
I don't have kids, I only have cats. So. I can't teach them manners. I can try to teach them manners, that can be my legacy. But I think for me, going back to what I said about the balance between what I'm leaving and just professionally is, I think overall the legacy that I want to leave, especially within esports and games that I'm passionate about, is that I'm not here in 10 years still talking about how I'm the only woman in the world that runs an esports organization. Like, I'm the only woman in the world that runs a large esports organization. Like, yes, it seems impressive, but it's also very sad if you really think about it. And so I want to leave the world in a better place, that women feel more comfortable joining the industry, being in the industry, mentoring as much as possible, using my experience that I had that for me just seemed normal, but now as I'm looking, it wasn't normal, using that experience and helping inform people's careers and giving them the opportunity to flourish. I have a niece and 2 nephews, so this isn't about my cats, but I have a niece and 2 nephews, and some are in their early 20s and some are teenagers, and it's like trying to, when I talk to them about my career or what I am, trying to inspire them to be at their full potential and to follow, like it sounds so cheesy, but to basically follow their dreams and do things that make them passionate, but like not just rest on their laurels that, I'm a huge gamer, so I'm going to get into video games, like really making them think about how they contribute to the greater good and just be good humans. So.
The first thing that came to mind, I know I've had a lot of time to think, but I'll be honest, the first thing was like, when I'm long gone from Turner, whenever that may be, but I hope that they just say, like, she survived a lot of bullshit. Like, kept going. Yeah, it can be true. And, I left it smiling. Yeah, like, there's a lot of bullshit, right? That goes on in sports, and it's good, bad, and ugly. And, by the end of it, I hope that I'm still standing and smiling. But, I think we're so fortunate to be in this spot of time of Me Too and Time's Up, and things are really moving and changing, and the Mavs and hirings and firings, and we're all kind of paying attention to what's going on. So I hope by the end that my legacy is just to kind of help propel it forward. Not that we won't need forums like this, not that we won't need our own women's-only organizations or panels or talks, but that finally the conversation will be different when we're in there, and that having female bosses and diversity will just be a norm, so that there's something else then to achieve, instead of it being a rarity that, our head legal counsel is a woman, or the head of this is a woman. Like, that'll be normal, and then we'll be talking about women doing other things. So hope to help that.
Now I've had even more time. So I set this New Year's resolution, kind of loose resolution, of this quote that I liked, that I heard, which is, success is the first half of your life, significance is the second. So I really like that quote. I mean, hopefully I have a little longer to build the legacy, but I really want to try to use that to help sponsor women. I mean, I had a lot of mentors that helped me, but it wasn't until later in my career I really appreciated the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And it can be an active sponsor, it can be a subtle sponsor, like when we're in a negotiation and our president will say, "What do you think?" That is the type of subtle sponsorship that helps propel. So I really want to try to figure out ways to do that to help other women, to Tara's point of trying to change the face of where it won't seem so unusual then.
I think I want to be known as somebody who built great teams that are diverse and really, bringing up great new talent. I love that.
You gotta do yourself. I just wanted to ask, as you guys, after hearing your stories, as you went into your sports fields and your teams and that nature, did you ever feel like less than? Did they ever make you feel less than, or if you weren't qualified because you were a woman and you may have not known this sport as well as the man knew the sport? And then also, what advice would you give for someone that would like to maybe transfer over into sports moving forward but doesn't have the background in it?
I'll go to what Lisa said, which is I think it's more about the business, depending on what you want to do, but whatever it is, whether it's marketing, legal, product, technology, it is still a business, and so knowing the business, I think, is paramount. I think people care more about that and don't really care if I can name all the players on the Orlando Magic, my hometown team. I mean, it is about what value you bring to what they're doing.
I would agree with that. I still get really confused with all the calls that get played and things like that. And plays that get called, see, I can't even say it right. But I think on the business side of sports, it really is being a functional expert and kind of knowing what you bring to the table, because that is the most important part of it. We're all spectators of the sport as well, so we go out and watch the games, but we're not the technical team. They would never ask us for advice about what's happening on the field, although my neighbors think they know everything that I'm supposed to be. Oh, you should have told Matt to do this. Right, I'll get right on it. So I think it really is just about, again, the functional area that you're in, with the value that you bring, the expertise that you bring. And I actually really love, as an HR person, I would say I really love having people from outside of sports coming into the business of sports, because I do think that sometimes there's a very myopic view of sports has done things a certain way. That's why I think the story is so great, is because, if left to the devices of the people in sports, they would not have your position, right? It took someone from the outside saying, duh, right? So having people from the outside, I think, is a really great thing. It just has to be marketed in terms of what functional expertise you bring and how is it that you could add to that business that you decide to come into.
Okay, last question. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Morgan Franklin. I'm a sales planner with Turner Sports Ad Sales. So in my world, it's very white, and it's men and women, but no people of color. So I'm one of the only black women or women of color, period, in ad sales on both sides, entertainment and sports, and I'm a planner, which is kind of entry level, or one promotion up. And for me, I'm very aware of who's in our organization, how we function, and it seems that at my level, that is the ceiling. And you don't make the real money as an executive. And you're kind of pushed out or left until you decide to just leave. So my question is, when do you know that it's time to pivot out of where you are because there seems to be a ceiling, or when do you decide I'm going to sit and figure out how to kind of crack that glass ceiling in your organization?
Oh gosh, I hope you said.
So, the Turner girls, we can speak to this. We have a diversity council.
Yes.
We're well aware of the
and it seems they're trying to push it, so they talk about it.
Some of the hurdler sales, right? So,
Yeah.
Lenny Daniels, who's so great, who's our president, is very honest and open and plain, and he would not be embarrassed for us to say, some pockets of our business, we have an issue. So what are we going to do about it? And we don't want to do what Zing says of just put a Band-Aid on it and pull some minorities around and just go put them over there and make it look like? No, like, let's walk the walk, talk the talk, and make it legitimate. So that's what we are thinking about and doing. But you should be vocal. So I think for you or for anybody, it's about, do I like this job? Do I like this job? Do I like what I'm doing? What do I want to do? Even if I don't see a person who looks like me who's done it before, is there a path that I can intelligently and strategically walk on to make my goals succeed? Also, is Turner completely as an organization something I like? So even maybe my group is not perfect or this path isn't perfect, but do I like this company wholly? And is it something that I believe in? Then it's worth holding on to. I started in PR here. I was really happy in PR. There were some things I thought could be better. I started looking around a little bit, and then somebody was very kind enough to pluck me and put me in talent, and that's where I belong, and I really blossomed, and thank goodness that person saw it in me. So there are things like that can happen, especially at a place like Turner, where we work hard not to put somebody in a box and say, you're a sales planner, you can never work for the marketing team, or you can never work at Cartoon Network. There's so many stories here about people who are being very smart people who will say, well, we want to develop them as a leader. So if you can answer those two questions of, are you happy in this job, or are you happy with the company, then look around for resources and sponsors and mentor and say, help me leverage it, or help me get the attention of my boss to tell me that I can show him or her that I deserve a promotion or I deserve some opportunity. I believe Turner is that place. That's just been my experience. So like Hanya said, we hope that you hang on.
I totally agree with that. And I was telling someone this, that I was having lunch with one of my bosses not too long ago, and I told her that I was in my dream job right now. And I had spent the first 5 years at Turner on the entertainment side and the last 12 on the sports side. And I said, sports side, my dream job. And she asked me the question of why, when I first started at Turner, did I not mention being interested in sports? And without even thinking about it, I said to her, well, I never thought that was an option. Like, I looked at sports and it was all white men. And until that moment, I had not even realized that I self-selected myself out of a possibility. So it has all worked out. But I guess to Tara's point, to my point about don't accidentally self-select. Like, if you like it here and if you like your role, do some of these things that Tara's talking about versus just assuming that ceiling will apply. Because I think for myself, it was a lot my own perception and I didn't do anything about it, if that makes sense.
I think Turner also, and this is one thing I alluded to when I was talking, that I have not experienced really at any company prior to coming here, has a great amount of men and women that want to mentor you and want to have those conversations with you. Not just within the Turner circle mentoring. One of the women here that mentored me, I literally just went up to her and it was like, I choose you, like you're my mentor. You were my mentor, whether you like it or not. You and I are going to meet monthly, and I'm going to talk about my feelings. And she's tough. Like, she's really tough on me and calls me out on my stuff when I'm talking to her about issues. And I have found that almost every woman that I've talked to here at a senior manager level, they're happy to do it, right? Because it's like, if I had that early on in my career, gosh, who knows, right? But so especially because you're here at Turner, there are plenty of women here that are, willing to,
hard to call for coffee.
Yeah, but you got
New York based or Atlanta based? Here.
Yeah, you got 4 women here that I'm volunteering.
And like I said,
but
we're not blind or we feel your pain, what's going on, and we're
not going to feed you lines about what's happening. So I would just say leverage the network here, in that respect, be fearless. Go up to somebody and be like, look, I've been watching you. I want you to be my mentor. But you also have to put in the work as well. You can't just say, I want you to be my mentor, tell me how to do my life. But take advantage of that as much as you possibly can. I would say that to every single person in here, even if you're not a Turner employee. Find someone, tell them, I need you, and I think that you'll be happily surprised that there are a lot of people that are willing to do that for you.
But I also think to answer that question in a non-Turner specific way, and just on the flip side, because they gave a lot of positive advice, which I believe was good. But I also think that sometimes you know when to throw in the towel for yourself. You have to have an internal voice, not worrying about what anybody will think or what anybody else is perceiving about you, if you are in a place and you have exhausted all of the resources that they are telling you to tap into, and you still are not getting anywhere, I think it's okay to say, I've given it my all. I can no longer give, and I'm going to find a place that likes and embraces who I am, and I don't have to do all of this hard work to get noticed. I can just come to work and give my best and move up like I'm supposed to, because there are places like that in the world that will give you that opportunity. So, you know, it's okay to sometimes say, I've had enough, because that happened to me once. And I had enough when I was at the NFL, and I couldn't move up, and I was giving, and there was just this glass ceiling in it. I just couldn't break through it. And now, 10 years later, the NFL is calling me because they want me to be in diversity at the NFL. Vindication. Well, I was still with you guys. You had me 10 years ago. But, you know, the point is that if you go through life and you walk through this journey and you give your best, you're going to shine ultimately no matter what. And so those people will recognize the greatness that you bring eventually. And if they don't, then it wasn't worth it for them.
Okay, another round of applause. Guys, sorry we're a little bit over. We're going to do the raffle now, and then we'll do closing remarks, and then we'll be done.
Y'all have internships for that? Because I didn't see that.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore. Now we have this training program where the folks have to stay for a whole year. Like, no, we did away with the interns. They take training for 3 hours. They already have degrees when they come. Works kind of like an internship, but not really.
What's the name of that program? The training program. Oh, the training program? Training program.
Mallory, can you grab them before they leave with their gifts?
Every single thing.
Okay, we will do the raffle real fast here. We've got 4 prizes. First one is a Turner Filmstruck bag with the Atlanta Hawks cap. And that's going to go to 982504. Yay! Another Filmstruck bag with a bunch of Turner goodies in it. 982503. Who came in right after? Alrighty. This is a big ticket item here. We have it's a Bluetooth speaker. 982580. All right. And last but not least, we have a signed Matt Ryan Falcons jersey. All right. Thanks to Jen for that. Everyone ready? 982575. 75. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. We'll see you at the next Atlanta event.